Okay, we are there.
It is now 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and begin. A little quiet in case you're out right there. Seems like it's quiet.
It does sound quieter, is it?
Come on. Okay, I'll just speak up. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Pleasant View Planning Commission meeting for January 4th, year 2024. It is now 6 p.m. We'll call to order our meeting. We would like to welcome all those that are joining us in attendance tonight.
Sorry. Scare you.
We'd like to go ahead and ask first for a pledge of allegiance and opening prayer, reading of expression about Commissioner Palumbo that we receive.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this opportunity we have to be together tonight as a planning commission for our city, and we're grateful for the opportunity to serve the citizens and residents that live here, and we're grateful for the community that we have and that has been built before us, and for all the people that live here, and grateful for the opportunity we have to make our city better, and pray the next prayer will do with this tonight. Say this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. First of all, we have the agenda that's been set before us. Is there anyone on the commission that tonight needs to do a declaration of conflict of interest or anything on the agenda?
Chair, I don't have a declaration of conflict, but I do have a question about the order of the legislative items, and apologize. Planning Director Bell, that I didn't address this with you further or prior, but we have consultants presenting on the transportation master plan and the impact fee facilities plan, and if we could move that up before my presentation on subdivision, just to honor their time. I don't know, switching A and B.
4A and 4B?
Yes, if that's pleasing to the council,
that should work.
I'll be here no matter what.
Okay, hearing no declaration of conflict of interest, let's go ahead and we will look at our item 2, our meeting minutes approval. We have consideration of approval of meeting minutes for July 7th, May 4th, 23, September 7th, 23, and October 5th, 23 meetings. They've been sent out, and I will have a chance to send any notes to staff. And do we feel adequate? There's been enough response, or we need to dig into it further?
It's your decision. I'm not aware of any changes that need to be made. If you're comfortable with it, I didn't receive any email response. So.
Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
There's some questions.
Okay, do you have questions on specific ones?
Sorry, so on the October 5th, there are some yellow highlighted that there's some blank spots that we need to fill in. So the first one is asking which commissioner declared or that they had a conflict of interest.
I saw that. That
was
me.
That was you.
Yes.
That's what we're thinking.
So, do you have that, Brandon? Take
Yeah.
notes? Okay.
Okay. Then the second highlighted was asking for which commissioner made a motion to approve the minutes with the amendments discussed in the meeting, and I thought it was a female voice. I don't remember who that was. Was me or Julie? Does anybody remember?
I tried listening to it. I couldn't get here, but so I don't know.
I don't remember.
I'm sure Julie did.
I think if we don't know the specific individual, we could just we could just list it as a commissioner and go.
Okay.
So,
Okay, because there's another one where it also asks the same thing for.
We don't know the specific one.
That one on page 3 was actually me, but I don't know if that At the top of page 30.
Page 3 of the which meeting?
October fifth.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's saying that.
Okay.
And then Brandon, this pretty these up to you speak on it.
Pretty much.
If they're a lot more current than we allow them to do, oh yeah, I remember so.
Yeah,
It'll be a little easier.
so
My making up wasn't.
I'll make those changes for the 2 where it wasn't clear. But the top of page 3 was Commissioner Bolingbroke. And then there was another one. Where was that located at?
The declaration of Sean.
Was it the bottom of page 1?
And we'll just have general as a commissioner.
Okay.
And then I've got the declaration for the conflict of interest. So I'll have those adjustments made and then we'll get them posted.
Hey, with the adjustments that have been discussed for the second and for those items, do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes for July 7th, 2022, May 4th, 2023, September 7th, 2023, and October 5th.
Just made a motion, do we have a second? I second. Sean seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'd like to go ahead and move to our administrative items. Consideration of a conditional use permit and site plan for current residents at 4860 North Old Patch Drive, 755 Burnham Drive. The staff will go ahead and we'll have Brandon give us a presentation on it and remind us that this will be a public hearing after the presentation.
Okay. Let me just take 1 second to, there should be a flash drive, Amy, available where we can pull up the site plan. Should be a separate folder specifically for it.
Packet materials are fine.
Okay, this is probably the best one to show for this, just generally, and we'll move around it as we need to. I'm gonna just sort of give highlights from the first couple pages because they're just sort of the technical procedures of a conditional use permit in this area. The first is that this is a conditional use permit is based on the section of the code is supposed to go to the planning commission and the city council. This makes this a decision for you, just a recommendation to the council. The zoning generally for this area is the A5 zone, which has a 5-acre lots requirement. That's not being considered tonight because this lot's already considered approved. But there are some setbacks that we'll be discussing. And then there's an overlay zone that's applicable that deals with sensitive land requirements. And so we'll be discussing some of those tonight, as well as some of the issues related to accessory buildings. So again, this is there's a conditional use permit required, which is why this is here. The first issue substantively to bring up is that there was an ordinance passed in 2023 for this zone that formally allowed accessory structures. It did give separate standards for setbacks related to accessory structures, separate from just the other permitted uses. That has a few of its own standards. And those standards are that an accessory structure shall be located not less than 100 feet from a public street, not less than 25 feet from any side or rear lot line, and behind the rear wall of the home. Additionally, I've pulled in the definitions for building. It says that building means any structure leaving a roof supported by columns or walls for the housing or enclosure of persons, animal or chattels, and a building accessory Accessory means a detached, supporting, subordinate, building clearly incidental to and located upon. There's no definition, we have an accessory attached, accessory apartment definition, but that's for attached, only. So we have in this, the definition that what's permitted is an accessory structure. But typically there's in planning, there's separate definitions and terms for an accessory structure, or an accessory, dwelling. And we don't have a formal definition in our code for accessory dwelling unit. Staff is of the opinion that this should be considered an accessory structure, which would mean that it's not, to be occupied, by, with living quarters. And so staff is recommending as one of the conditions of approval that, that the applicant sign a letter that indicates that they won't use it for living quarters, as a structure within the structure. In addition to that, the building, accessory structures specifically state that that they're supposed to be located behind the rear wall of the home. I don't have a pointer, but if you're facing towards the top of the screen, you can see that there's Burnham Drive, and the home, okay. The home staff's perspective is that the lot width for this zone is 200 feet, and the lot width refers to the width of the lot from the front property line. The address that are listed on the documents is 755 Burnham Drive. Staff considers this the front, and one of the arguments for this to be the front property line is that it's the only property line that meets the lot width requirement, and the home faces that drive as well. This property line over here is considered the side property line. That doesn't meet a 200-foot lot width standard to be considered a front. And so based on there is a connecting arch covered walkway between the two, but based on the definition of a building being supported by columns and walls, staff does not consider this to be an addition, considered a separate structure. It's not. I spoke to their building inspector. He stated that typically an addition is considered under building code, and in his professional opinion that it needs to be structurally connected. In other words, they need to be act as one structural unit. Whereas these don't, and essentially said the footings need to be connected. This is completely separate. I don't remember this existence exactly. It's about 60 feet, I believe. And so we consider this an entirely separate accessory structure. And the code states that it needs to be behind the rear wall of the home, which based on the interpretation that this is the front property line, that the building would need to be pulled back this way. There's also a requirement that the home or that the building be built on slopes less than 25%. I don't anticipate that being a problem anywhere as they move it back. It's the applicant's responsibility to provide the actual slope in the area. They provided it graphically, but they haven't given them numbers, at least that I had the opportunity to detail out. But that's an additional condition. So it's the main, like the biggest staff recommendation, I would say, is that the home or that the accessory structure be required to be moved back behind the rear wall of the home per what's stated here in the ordinance. It meets the general setback requirements for it, with the exception of that one location issue, the dimension lines that are given are helpful, but they're not to the closest point of the property line. So they all go to the corners. So staff would request that they give the dimension from the closest point of the building to the closest point of the property line. Just I'm confident it meets the setbacks. That would be have that information provided for an updated location behind the rear wall of the home, but that's also helpful for our building inspector at the time of building construction and building permit approval. So the there's a topographical slope plan that has been provided, but not a grading plan, which is my staff's understanding is it's a cut and fill plan unless I've overlooked it in the plans. And we just need that to demonstrate slope disturbance and things like that. What, to show where it's at currently and then where it will be moved to after construction is completed and the final grading has occurred. So they'll need to show cut and fill, and then they'll need to demonstrate on that the staff recommends that they demonstrate that final grading plan has that the soil has an angle equal to or less than the angle of repose, which shouldn't be a problem, but it's just required in the ordinance. The main issue that, based on the information that the city has in this area, is the issue of earthquake faults. And there's none on this property, so that's not an issue. This isn't an exact number, but it's somewhere between a quarter mile or 1,000 feet or so to the closest earthquake fault per our city engineer. So that, it's very much meets that requirement that it's not within 50 feet of an existing fault. I'm going to go ahead and just summarize each of the points because I don't know that are at the end. I don't know if I covered all of them during the report. So staff recommends that prior to proceeding to the city council, that the lines showing the setback need to be adjusted to show the distance from the closest point of the building to the closest point of each of the property lines to verify that the standards in this report are met. And so the building inspector will know where the building will be located in relation to the property line. That information should be provided for the building in its updated location if it needs to be moved to meet the other requirements. The staff recommends that the property owner be required to provide a signed letter indicating that the building will not be used for living quarters as part of their building permit application, so that it remains as an accessory structure and not an accessory dwelling unit, which is not listed as a permitted use in the A5 zone. And then the staff recommends that the applicant provide a grading plan for review by the city engineer prior to being considered by the city council, and that it be demonstrated on that grading plan that the grade of the soil will have a final slope of an angle that's equal to or less than the angle proposed. And then the applicant also needs to just verify that the garage will be only constructed on lands that are 25% in slope or less, or move it to an area where it will be, and that would be for any updated location. And then the above conditions should all be met prior to going to council for consideration for approval. Any conditions that are listed in the engineer's review memo, and then there's a requirement for spark arresters that is listed in the staff report. And then Public Works may need to just verify the location or require adjustments to the location of any new utility lines on the property. A closed sewer system, staff recommends, well, it needs to be required for city code in this area, and then no septic systems are permitted. And then staff recommends just that minor modifications may be permitted to the final design in order to accomplish the other conditions in this staff report as necessary to meet those recommended conditions. And then it looks like we took care of the last one prior to getting here tonight regarding the application. So the main deliberation I would suggest is the issue of if the planning commission agrees with the interpretations I mentioned regarding the location of the building being behind the rear wall of the home and as an accessory structure. Those are my comments. There were no public comments that were submitted. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for staff before we listen to the petitioner?
I have just one. Brenda, maybe you can clarify that the bullet that says that the conditions above need to be provided prior to the consideration. Does that mean that all the conditions below that bullet are not, they don't need to be provided prior to it going to the city council?
Those are things that I think could be left to, that are below that could be left to staff discretion.
Okay.
The ones that were above that, the reason why I put that is because there's 5 or 6 categories of information that are called for in the ordinance, and there's 2 or 3 that were the first conditions of approval, the earlier ones that weren't fully provided, and so that was why. You bet.
Any other questions for staff? I'd like to ask the petitioner to come on forward and state your name and address for the record, and shedding light or extra things that you may want to address or let the commission.
Is that my?
So I am Bill Kerner, my wife Janet, this is our architect Chad Bailey with the Develop Architects. And so yes, we are the petitioners on this. We've lived in Pole Patch about 5 years, moved here from the Kansas City area. And our intent in doing this is first of all, I've probably got the only house in Pole Patch that only has a 2-car garage. And in fact, our CCRs now require a 3-car garage. So that was one thing that I was considering for resale value. The other factor that made us consider putting in a garage was that our existing garage is now occupied by rescued cats. So our cars have been sitting out, especially last winter. That was not a real pleasant situation. So that's why we decided we wanted to build a garage. The design that we chose, first of all, I'll say that regarding Brandon's comments on attachment, architecturally, we needed to go to the west side of our house in order to build the garage, because that's the only place that makes sense. And the west side of our house, the way the roof line works, it was not really conducive to directly attach the garage to the house, which is why we chose to move it out at some distance. And to make it attached, that's why we included the breezeway there. So that was our intent on this. The design that we chose, we don't actually need that space that's above the garage. But again, for resale value, we said we like that design. It worked well with the design of our house. And we said, okay, so we've got some upstairs that we can work with there. And that would probably be useful for anybody who purchases our house in the future. Our intent for using it right now would only be to move some exercise equipment in there, or maybe I have some office space when my wife bears me out of the house. So that was what our intent was on that. But we had planned on setting it up so that it could be finished. If big family moved in there later on, they could use that area above perhaps for guest purposes or that type of thing. So that's my biggest quibble actually with the report in front of us here, is that we consider this to be an attached structure, and we would like it to be usable for a future family if they so desire to finish off the top of that garage and use it for living space. So I was hoping the council could clarify for me what the intent is on living space and the whole issue of attached versus detached. And then I think Chad may have some comments on that too.
You'll have to help us out on the living, attached and detached. I thought was very well covered by it.
Yeah, I'm happy to address. So we currently have an ordinance in place that's for attached accessory apartments. And from what we understand in talking with our building inspector, that's shared walls. And so this would not meet that definition. I will say, there's been exploration of looking at someday in the future, maybe having detached, but right now that's not That's not permitted. That's not something that's allowed anywhere in the city. So, just based on our definitions and what we have before us, that's our interpretation.
Right.
I don't know if that helped, or if you have more questions about the ordinance, and happy to send them. to
Well,
you.
I may ask Cab to address that.
What about the setback, Bill? Because it's not, we don't have a public.
Well, yeah,
Street.
technically,
It's a private
the
street.
streets in Pole Patch are not public streets.
They're
They're
private.
maintained
maintain
by
them.
Pole Patch.
And the property line that Brandon pointed out is not Burnham Drive. They have a split lot. They're a single lot.
Could we get you to come up with mic so it's
Yeah,
on the speaker for the public?
Yeah,
record?
Yeah, sure.
So here is their lot. This is Pole Patch Drive heading north. And then Burnham Drive is a private drive. This section right here in Burnham Drive is also the same lot. There are two lots in Pole Patch that have this, whereas one lot split by a private drive. So, you know, the setback coming from here, I don't think this is an item of discussion, but just to clarify, you know, providing those dimensions, this section is also considered their lot, and Burnham Drive is not a public road. I don't know if that has any effect on pushing this building, having it be required to be behind the walls of the home. My interpretation was behind the front walls of the home.
That doesn't change the fact that even if that's a road,
A private road, the ordinance says public road is all I'm trying to clarify.
if that was marked as a driveway, I think that'd be a little different, but if you have a lot on one side and a lot on the other, where are you focusing the setback? Setback still sits behind the house, right?
Correct. We just wanted to get that here and to discuss in the ordinance, does it say behind all four walls, or does it clarify it's behind the front wall?
It says behind the rear wall of the home specifically.
And then I think the only question I have for everyone is, which part of the city code is a definition for addition? So far, we've heard a definition or an opinion from a recently hired building inspector. I think this constitutes an addition. It is structurally attached. The roof in and of itself will have to be analyzed by a structural engineer. So if there is racking between the two buildings, that the roof and the two buildings do not collide. And the other portion of the opinion is that they share a footing. So if we did a strip footing and a strip foundation wall between the new portion of the addition and the existing building, does that constitute an addition? I think there are plenty of examples of people, you know, attaching or closing in a carport. They are not attached by a foundation. It is on spot footings and posts, and then they wall it in. So, you know, there's other items on the docket that I think we're glad to comply with, but the portion of the building being behind the rear walls is completely contingent on whether this is an addition or whether this is a detached building. And I would just like some clarity on that. I can't find anywhere in the ordinance, but based on the opinion of the building inspector, they need to be structurally attached. The roof, like I said, will have a structural diagram on it and will be analyzed by a structural engineer. And worst case scenario, it sounds like we could dig strip footings and tie the foundation walls together.
And you mentioned the shared wall. Where does that come from? Is that in our ordinance?
So that's in the AAA ordinance. So that's the attached accessory apartments.
Okay.
So, and that's, I mean, again, to Brandon's presentation, I mean, if there's some type of provision that there's not gonna be people living in there and a letter provided, I think that that's addressable. But that's just our current ordinance. We don't allow for those detached apartments, but we do allow for attached. And so I guess that kind of brings into that question as well. The one thing, and I don't know, Chad, I wasn't involved in the discussion, maybe Brandon has some clarity here, but I don't see anything in our code, to your point, on the definition of addition, but I do know that the International Building Code has various definitions, and so I don't know if that's what, Tyler's basing that off of, I'm not certain.
Told this move before is why I'm asking, you know, it's there, attached structure, roof, walls, footing, foundation. I'm okay with any of it. I just need some clarity because the direction we are trying to go is to avoid putting any type of deed or letter on the tile because they are not going to be here long term. And the highest and best use for them is to not have that attached for title insurance purposes or selling to another person.
From the city, we have to remember as commissioners, we have to judge it by what's on the books. And whether they're here or not, we have to judge that. We're saying a AAA is connected, they're attached. And this is not, this is almost like trying to circumvent the system by, hey, we'll have it look like it's part of the structure, but it's not part of the structure. But in our ordinance, it says they are attached by.
So the ordinance doesn't say that, the building inspector says that.
Yeah, that was true.
On the AAA, she's saying it's a.
And I'm pulling that right now, I'm looking.
But so
So, can I make a comment? So I know that is approved in other cities. That very design. I personally was involved in a project in Army City. That was, we specifically were requested to attach. When we were told the breezeway, told them that criteria, so that's what we did. So I know I don't know if they still allow that, but I do know at the time, 5 or 6 years ago, they did allow that. I know other cities would allow that, and consider the breezeway part of the structure because it's attached. And I think the way that they designed it looks beautiful, it would attach, create, well, the house. I also know instances in our city, very recent instances, where people have built multi-million-dollar houses, and because of that requirement, put a really ugly thing between their house and their garage, just so it was attached. And so I guess what I'm saying is that I would be totally in favor of that, considering that, because I don't think I think that is somebody's opinion. That's just my thing. From what I read, that is a detached. Anyway, I think anyway.
Any other questions for the addition at this time? Okay, thank you. We're going.
So our only request really here is we want it to be attached. We want to avoid the letter, so we need definition from the code of what constitutes an attachment, and we'll proceed with that.
So are you saying that you're okay doing the footing, the strip footing, and closing the breezeway and making it attached? If you have to.
If that is the definition,
Yeah.
from the previous definition, it was connected by a structural foundation.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we just get it in the minutes that that's, what we've been told. We just want to know what constitutes an addition so that the plan itself can meet that.
Maybe just one last question, sorry, while you're still up. What was the rationale again of why the gap? Why can't the structure come right to the house?
So first of all, I had a rather sizable, it's 14-foot wide, basically, I think it was poured as an RV pad in there. It would require considerable amount of regrading, plus the west wall of my house, the slope on the roof is actually to the west. So I'd end up with a big trough there or something. That was our issue in trying to design it, was how do we match up a roof line here? And we just couldn't make it match up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we need to open this as a public hearing. Can you go ahead and someone make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we open for a public hearing.
We've made a motion to open. We have a second.
Second that.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Okay, this is the part where the public can come and make comment. First, I would like to recognize that we had Cooper Bullock that's here tonight. He's from our youth city council, and we appreciate any time that we have some of them show up. So if you really have a burning question or a comment on this, you're more than welcome to come up and talk at this time. That's why we do it for the open public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this comment? Please come and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Stephen Mansfield. I'm at 445 East, 275 North Hyde Park, Utah, here for an installation project. But I just wanted to, Jeff commented other municipalities. I am an architect and I've done this in I've done it in Logan, River Heights, Hyde Park. So it's, just so you know, that's not the interpretation of the two walls coming together. It's not, that is not a uniform interpretation. It's not to say that.
Thank you.
Sarah, excuse me, Sarah Gary. Just as a matter of comment, when the commission is discussing, it's not a matter of opinion when you have a staff member who's our city's licensed inspector who gives a review and tells you what it is. That's that. That is staff's comment, that is staff's position, then that becomes the planning commission's position. It's not a matter of opinion of what you think other cities do, or this has been done, whatever else. If you have a question, you want Tyler to change it, bring him in. It's just watching the conversation is a little bit somewhat unnerving when we have opinions that overrule experts' recommendations. Just remember that, just some thoughts. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? Public comments? See no other further public comments? So I'd like to make a motion to close. So, Sean made a motion, we have a second. Second, Chad, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now close to the public hearing. Comments from the commission. I'm gonna jump in first here, and I just want to make a comment. Thank you, Sarah, for your feedback, because that's one thing I want to point out. If staff has got any more other relevant information, but as a reminder, we have to judge what's on the books, and I understand what you're trying to say, and we're being guided by our staff that says this is the recommendation, or this is what our inspectors, or this is what the staff is telling us, and we can only go from there, because I'm not a structural engineer, so we have to look at all of the facts that are put before us, not what necessarily with other cities or other ordinances. Now, as a group, I'm going to take that one step further. We as a commission have three options. We can either recommend approval to the city council, we can recommend denial, we can even table it until we look into further details and more information. That doesn't preclude you from taking it to the city council, whichever way we recommend. And it also doesn't preclude you from going and saying, can we have this part of the ordinance redefined or cleaned up a little bit so it'll be a little more specific. So we as a commission, we kind of keep that in mind. When we look at that. Okay, with that, thoughts on the project? What are some of the thoughts of this section?
Just a comment. And I understand where Sarah is coming from. I work for Weaver County. I pulled up our definitions. It says for a breezeway, as it applies in our code, it says an accessory dwelling unit located in a building that is only connected to the single family dwelling by means of a continuous roof line, such as a breezeway, shall be determined to be a part of the single family dwelling, provided that the distance between them is no greater than 15 feet. So that was Weaver County's standard. Now, I understand that it's not applied here, but it's in code there. It's not in code here. We don't have that standard. I agree the building inspector has given an opinion, but if it's an opinion, that's for us to consider. So I don't, if it's set in code, a breezeway is not a connection, there's no question in my mind what recommendation, but it does not say that. So I think there is something that we can talk
And I don't know if this helps, but with the questions that were brought up, I did find in our code in the AAA section just a little bit of a definition, and it's not completely clear on walls and foundations and all of that, but just in relation to the attached accessory apartments, the AAA, that says exterior alteration shall complement and blend with the home in such a way that the AAA is not apparent from the street. Separate entrances, if required, shall not be visible from the street. And that's, I mean, the extent of what it defines there. If that helps, I don't know.
Yeah, so in prior employment laws, I have approved, not necessarily this long of a freezer, but buildings in similar situations. But my report was based on the definitions in our code, and you know, I understand that professionals operating in different municipalities were responsible to what our code says. And so what I tried to do is pull the definitions from our code specifically, number one. Number two, I recognize that the applicant was asking for a definition addition. I wasn't able to find that definition in our definition sections of the zoning code, but I looked at it from the other angle, which is the garage meets the standard for a building on its own. It's structurally supported by its own walls, and it meets that definition. So from that logic, my opinion was that it's its own structure. I'll leave it at that.
How much distance is there, can we tell, how much distance is there between the two buildings? Not that that's in this code, that's not gonna change that.
Is that on a different page? Or? Yeah. 39.89. Very specific.
So it's specifically meant to be separated.
Is that the only entrance into the?
In the garage,
Uh-huh.
I think there's a door on the west side, but that would be the door that access if you will. That would takes you into the garage, and then there's stairs that go up to the upper floor.
And I'll note that 40 feet was just, we chose that relatively arbitrarily. That could be moved closer. But like I said previously, there is a 14-foot wide concrete pad there that would require an immense amount of regrading if we were to take that out. So we can't get it probably any closer than that.
Other questions or thoughts, comments or discussion items?
The only other comment that I had was about the letter that was requested and the sign. I mean, how is that even really enforceable? I mean, does it get recorded? I don't know. I guess, but I mean, they sell the house, then the next family moves in, and they have their kids over, and they're staying up there, and someone can say, get out of there. I mean, who enforces that? I mean, I don't know, just, it seems like I personally wouldn't sign a document like that. And I wouldn't be in favor of not including that, but.
Okay, before you answer that, I will come back and then come to the question. Isn't this site, I'm not talking to them, wouldn't you actually say that in some way that's being set up specifically so someone can come by it so they can have an apartment over the top of that?
I mean, that could easily be an office. I mean, everybody works from home, and that could easily be an office and not living space, but.
But they're basically saying that that's what they would set it up for, so they made it as much of it.
Perhaps, I mean,
Sorry, Brandon, to cut you off, but go ahead and answer the question.
Yeah. So just to back up, I think give you a little helicopter view to start to answer the question. It starts with what's permitted in the zone, and there's not that what it states is a single family dwelling. Okay, what's not included, and then accessory structures. What are separate from accessory structures are accessory dwelling units. once you have more than one building that are, two separate buildings, then you're not dealing with a single family home anymore, you're dealing with a multifamily situation. So the purpose behind that letter is it's part of the building permit, it's kept on file. What it does for the city is that it says that, they can have, if they get approval and meeting the other conditions, that's kept on record with their building permit, and it makes it clear that the city did not give them permission to use it as a dwelling unit. And so if that use changes in the future, it prevents the city from being on the hook legally to have said, well, you have to let me do this, code enforcement can't come out or change this because the city didn't provide official approval for that number, and so that's probably the main thing. Once there's a principle called equitable estoppel legally, and what that means is essentially once you've allowed someone to do something, they've gotten some sort of formal approval from the city, and they've taken action based on that advice from the city, from the correct official at the city, then the city has had its shot. It's kind of one bite of the apple, and they're allowed to continue. And so the letter is to make it very clear the city is not providing you official permission to use this as a dwelling unit. So that's the purpose that it serves.
The letter is requesting the homeowner that they can't use it for any purpose other than storage, just to clarify. Not as even as a dwelling unit is.
No, that's not in the staff report. It's not what I wrote.
That's just the comments we received.
Okay, that's not, I'm happy to show you the text in the staff report. I just said they will not use it as living quarters, and if we need to, I'm happy to read it just to clear this up.
So they could use it as like a gym or an office.
Yes.
Without having a breezeway. It would be an accessory building that we could use as a gym or an office, finish that upstairs. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So that's really all we wanted in the first place.
Okay, then we don't, no problem. Doesn't seem like
So,
we
and
would staff and
we will not sign a letter stating, though, that it could never, ever be used. What if a big Mormon family lives in there and they want a son or a daughter just want to have a sleepover up there? What is so wrong about that?
So
We don't want it to be an Airbnb, even
Hey,
though
let's-
Old Hatch allows Airbnb.
Let's make sure that we're addressing the commission on this. We want to make sure that we're not just getting into a discussion that leads us a little bit outside. of
And
context.
staff's intent, I mean, we're not making moral determinations on what's right or wrong here. We're doing everything in our power to try to apply the code. And apply the codes and apply the building code based on interpretation of our building inspector, and that's every intention of what we're trying to accomplish. So if this is not.
And from our point of the commission, we're supposed to read what's in the code, we're use staff recommendations, and then we try to interpret them to the best. Doesn't mean that the citizens, they're more than welcome to come and petition to have those changes made if that's what's needed. There are processes and steps on that, but based on what's on the books today is what we have to kind of judge, make our recommendations. And you've been through that, of course. Any other thoughts from the commission? We have 3 different options before us. We are recommending by. We have another comment.
Just, I was able to have a little bit of communication with our building inspector, and he said it is a building code. So
And what was that? I missed that last part.
he said that the separate foundations is a building code item.
Okay,
So to clarify, if the foundations are connected. I mean, we can find the code, but to clarify, if that's the crux of the matter, we table, approve, reject. That's what's on the docket today. Since the foundations are connected, isn't an addition. If it isn't an addition, everything we talked about is important.
Sure, I guess to that point, that is my question. To staff, I would ask, we've talked about putting a foundation. If those are actually connected, does that mean that this is part of the single family dwelling and it's not an accessory?
The best person to answer that would be Tyler, our building inspector.
Okay.
And from what I understood talking with, I mean, I think that that's exactly his interpret, I mean, if they are connected, then that would be a single structure. Just to reiterate with our, attached accessory apartments ordinance, that would need to be, applied. There is a requirement to come before just the DRC with an application to get, that, to make sure that parking and other, requirements in the code are being met.
So, I had a longer conversation with Tyler yesterday, and he mentioned there were several details about what constitutes attached. So I'm not a building inspector and I can't remember everything that was said. But one possibility is that, you know, if the design can be adjusted to meet the definition of attached per the approval of the city, the building inspector. But of course, this is just a recommendation, will go to the council as well. So they would have to consent to that approval as well. But he's probably a better person to speak to.
So we could always table this, going back to what you're saying, is we could table this and actually ask the building inspector to show up on the next meetings to have a chance to discuss it, if that's a little more detail, or to look at the specific code or ordinance.
Yes.
I mean, just one more thing in closing, the International Residential Code, which Tyler Seaman has to be taking his interpretation and opinion from. It says, an addition is defined in chapter 2 as, quote, an extension or increase in the floor area, number of stories, or height of a building or structure. And that's chapter 11 of the International.
Yeah, I'm hearing from you, but like I say, I'm probably trying to interpret for it, because would be to ask staff to have any come for that is an option, so.
So my question is, you know, you mentioned there's 3 options. I think the applicant, from my understanding, is willing to do, they just need some direction. Where are we going from there? So if we say that is not an approved structure, I think we give them some direction so they know how, because otherwise I think we gotta come back to planning commission, right? So I think.
And one option, Commissioner, could be to table the item and then next month we bring back with the building inspector and have more research on this item and this discussion if desired.
And a similar option that would be to recommend that the issue be addressed with the building inspector and council.
So then it doesn't delay the process. That's a great suggestion.
But we still need the recommendation on the, based on what's currently on the book.
And I think maybe including in that is that the building inspector and the applicant talk and see if they can work out the solution that meets, you know, both parties prior to going to council. Not necessarily requiring it, but at least having a conversation, see what can be done.
I make another comment. I think consistency is important. I'm just looking at my neighborhood in Pleasant View that has a couple of these unattached structures. And I know that the lots are different sizes, but this is very clear that these structures were pushed back, you know, towards the back behind the foundations. And so we have to make sure that we're consistent. You know, if we're going to go a different direction here, I don't know if that's fair to the people who have already put in and had to, you know, comply. So,
So if I'm hearing you, it's either got to be brought over and connected, which means to have an extension of the addition, thank you, or it goes back to the comments from staff, which is you have to set it back.
Right. Yeah.
And meet the criteria on the setback, and then it's not necessarily attached.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at just one here on Google Map that's in my neighborhood, and it's clearly set back behind the foundation of the home. And there's one across the street that's the same way. And so, you know, whatever the decisions that we get to, we have to be consistent with what's, and then find out why we were making those decisions if we don't have a clear, understanding within our code. It appears clear out of the sample too, that we had a clear direction, but we want to make sure we're consistent.
Well, in theory, the commissioner has said, well, it cost me a lot of money, but in theory, we could, without the parking path slide over, connected, cost money. Change the roof on pitches and put another path on the other side. They still have options to match the code.
Well, they still could just build an enclosed breezeway exactly how it's drawn, and that's considered attached.
I don't think so.
I think so. I think that's that's what we were just talking about.
It's not.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. As long as you have the strip footings attaching the two structures with an enclosed breezeway, you're now attaching two structures. And it's all part of the same structure.
Is it part of the same foundation?
That's what we're talking about. The strip foundation, strip footings. So, yeah.
I guess that's where I would have to defer to listen to the building inspector and consider it, is it considered that one?
But, again, like I said, we've dealt with this, that's approved in Ogden City and in Canada, so.
I want to address the comment about moving behind the rear wall of the house. And we set it that way to help preserve some view line, if you will, out to the west. But that in particular is not a big issue for us. We'd be moving it back 16 feet basically to be even with the wall of the rear wall of the house. So that's not a huge issue. The whole issue that we have is it attached and we keep it.
Hey, if anybody like to make a motion, we have 3 different opportunities on the table, this time would be a recommended body.
I'd like to make a motion that we, let me just look at this real quick. That we, approve, recommend approval for the conditional use permit as, with the conditions except for that the owner required to provide a signed letter indicating that the building will not be used for living quarters as part of the building permit application, and all other recommendations as outlined in staff report.
We have a motion on it. Let me ask clarification before we get a second on some detail to it, but is it staff report? They're doing, so you're saying they still require to do setback. And some of the items you guys discussed is that you're gonna be requiring it to be closed in because it's still an open breezeway. So you're by not having a letter, then you're saying we still are on living quarters. Because I'm just trying to get some clarification because we're recommending the city council something.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, probably have to clarify that one. I mean, I consider that attached from my experience in construction. From what I've dealt with other cities, that is approved elsewhere. So I would say that's just an addition to the house, not a detached structure.
Okay, so do we need to change anything on your motion from what the staff has?
They're open to the footings. So
Correct.
maybe.
I mean, that's what I'm trying, I guess what I'm trying to say is, or get at is I think whether we, let me rescind my motion. I mean, I think they just want clarification where to go. And so, if we say, I mean, again, I would consider that a reason, that makes it attached. That's how I dealt with it elsewhere. We're not talking about.
But I'm not talking about how you build, but based on our ordinance that we have.
That is unclear.
Okay, so how do we make a motion? One thing I liked was actually that we make a motion, in our motion, that the building inspector try to work with them. And the building inspector come and be present at city council, so I would like to ask.
I mean,
Let's talk between us.
Just
Yeah.
for clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean,
But are we recommending that all this be passed on behalf of what the staff? Are we recommending that staff? I don't know, being that. Take a shot at it. I can't, I'm not able to. I'm chairman, so typically I'm not supposed to, but go ahead.
Chair, I will move that we recommend denial of the application to the city council with the condition that between now and the city council meeting, staff, the building inspector, and the applicant get together to figure out what the definition of attached actually means and what would make this attached. And if that could work, then the city council can take that information and make their recommendation. That's my motion.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table. Do we
I'll
have a
second.
We have a second now discussion. Are there any questions, staff? Are you okay understanding what motion has been made?
That is subject to all of the staff recommendations in the staff report.
One clarification, what if the basis for, recommending the letter be required is based on the idea that it's not an addition, but a separate structure. So can you address that?
If it is determined to be an attached structure, that letter goes away. If it's determined to be an accessory structure, then the letter stays.
I think the only thing I would add to it is and it goes back to my comment about consistency, about this body being a part of this discussion, because I don't think with us maybe not having a full awareness of exactly where we stand. I'm just going off of 2 properties within my neighborhood that were set down a path not that many years ago, and now we're changing gears, at least from what I can see off the map. So
But were what you're talking about, were those built as separate structures? Because they're trying to attach it, is my understanding of what's going on.
well, but those people would have been given guidance to go a certain direction because of, the interpretation. What I'm saying is if we're changing the interpretation of the code in any way or shape or form, we need to make sure we do it the right way, because again, people have built, whether these ones are unattached, but maybe they wanted them to be attached. Maybe the breezeway they were told no. And so I think the clarity needs to also come to this group. And so if we need to table it until a future meeting where we actually have the inspector here, or I don't know, and if that's appropriate.
Well, we have 3 options. We've got an option on the table now is to recommend denial to the city council. Now, we've also recommended that they get together and see if there's some changes, or also make the building inspector come and help clarify the city council what those are. Now, I'm probably with you, and I'm saying, if we would like to, we see a weakness in ours, we should have staff probably come and help us rewrite that and clarify. So that, and we can change the ordinance can be changed. So going forward, those people build their neighborhood will always have those, but going forward, any new thing, we can change it from the back forward, we can clarify. I think that's something we should pass. But Sean made the motion. Who was the second? Who had the second? Okay.
Can I clarify one thing?
Yes.
And this is the intent of this is to make sure I understand, not to make a suggestion. I understand your motion to mean that deny as currently presented, but if this issue of whether it's attached or not, and any adjustments to accomplish that are reconciled between staff and the applicant, that you wouldn't necessarily be recommending denial if that issue was resolved between staff and the applicant.
That is correct.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Thank you. Motion, I think this is one that's we do need to get a little more clarification. I think what we see in constant variations as we see changes from different lots, different building, you know, they push the limits, so the next step will be, we hope to have you line up with the inspector and with our staff, see what other things we can, it sounds like you're open to look at different options. And then hopefully we can get a little better clarification that we take a step out of that before it goes to the council. So thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, we'd like to go ahead and move on to consider item 3B, consideration of a site plan for Stone Meads at 1485 West Stone Field, building addition at 2703 North Parkland Boulevard. Last for the staff, go ahead with the presentation.
Oh, it's a continuing.
Chair, so this is again at 1485 West Stone Way. It's in the MCM zone, which is a manufacturing commercial mix.
Which one do you want to open? Sorry.
And the this basically an amendment to a site plan is a permitted use when you're making an accessory use in this zone, whether whether the main use is conditional or permitted the way our code reads. So this is a permitted use. What the main use is it's light manufacturing, and it's a meat processing plant. And so what they're trying to do here is, I think I ended up with the but they're trying to add, they're trying to add some office space. That office space is located right here, and so you can see it's a very small percentage of the building. It's being proposed to be added. With regards to enforceability of the ordinance, there's limited enforceability of ordinances when you are dealing with a site that has already had a legal. And so what the only ordinances that can be considered are the ordinances as they apply to the addition, or if there's a general standard that the addition is affecting, like percentage of the landscape, which we'll discuss at one point during this. And so this is a corner lot per the italicized language in our code. The 20-foot setback specifically applies to the parking and the building. So it spells out that the setback applies not just to the buildings, but the parking. And then front setback is 20 feet. And the code also specifies that when you're on a corner lot, both of the street adjacent property lines are considered a front yard and have front yard setback. So that detail will come up a little bit later. That required front setback again is a minimum of 20 feet. However, the setback increases if the building height is over 20 feet at a 1-to-1 ratio. So in other words, for every foot of height on the building, an additional setback is required. I believe the building height was 23 feet, and it meets that. The building setback at least that much. And so it meets that required setback. But we'll talk about the setback relating as it relates to the parking in a bit. Again, the building's 23 feet tall, and the setbacks met for that. Staff would request that they provide. I don't believe the exact distance to the building was actually shared. I have a dimension right here, unless I missed it on one of the other plans. This is actually, I have two documents that relate to the site plan, so I'll show the other one later, which is the more detailed one. Regarding parking, they are proposing 52 stalls. The staff is of the opinion that they meet the parking requirement. I'm not gonna go through the details, but when you add up the different uses within the building, it adds up to 51 or 52 stalls, depending on how you round. It's 51.4, and so, however, there is one issue on the south end. There's currently, I believe there's two, drive accesses to the property. There's an existing one up here, and there's one right near the corner of the lot, which is where they're actually proposing additional parking. And the issue is the way our ordinance is written, you can drive access in that 20 feet setback, but you can't put parking stalls as staff's interpretation. And it says specifically that the 20-foot setback applies to parking. And so again, saying that there's limited enforceability, we can't ask them to move the existing stalls, but they're adding 3 at the end that were where either a landscape island or a drive access was. And so it violates the 20-foot setback that specifically says it applies to parking. Staff recommendation on this actually is that the parking ordinance states that the planning commission essentially has flexibility on the number of stalls. So staff recommend that the applicant be required to remove those 3 stalls, but that they're able to get away with that. We'll put them at 49 stalls, and staff believes that that's sufficient parking based on flexibility provided in the ordinance. That would allow them to meet both the parking requirement and the setback requirement for the parking. The applicant was cooperative in working with the engineer in removing this drive access, which is, I don't know, 15 feet from the corner. So it was very close, and I think that's a safety issue. So we're appreciative of that effort on their part. I'm just going to go through the 5 recommended conditions of approval that the applicant needs to provide. The full these are staff recommendations. The applicant needs to provide a full dimension line for the property line in front and side of the building addition. The purpose of that is to assist at the building permit stage. And then any new parking stalls in our area should only be located in an area outside of the 20-foot setback from both the property lines. This property line and the one that's just down here off the screen. And that the commission reduced the parking stalls by 3 in this area in order to meet that setback. The requirements of the fire marshal, and then any minor variation of building footprint or height setback while still meeting those height requirements and not affecting the minimum parking due to those minor adjustments if necessary for construction. But I guess that part about if necessary for construction details like that building permit isn't in the staff report. I'm just adding that verbally as a recommendation so it doesn't get out of hand. I would like to pull up a couple of other pages just so you it's more clear. So I just want to be clear. This is in your packet, but there's the plan that we're looking at was a little bit more conceptual. But I'd just like to recommend that it be clear that these more detailed documents are the site plan that are the formal site plan that are being approved. You can see right here, this is the final design of the parking lot. And so these are the 3 stalls that would be recommended to go away to meet the setback requirements. And just that they meet the 20-foot from this property line as well. I think that covers all of my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Any questions or comments to the staff? We have a petitioner here to come up and fill any questions or make comments about the project.
Steve Mansfield, I'm the architect. So Brandon's absolutely right. Those initial drawings were conceptual, and those were drawings I did, but as we got into design review and the civil engineer requested additional clarification on civil, we got our civil engineer involved who generated these drawings. So, we'll definitely have civil drawings as we proceed to get a permit.
And then are you guys also okay with the, parking, adjustments?
I've been assured by Brookstone that I'm actually a little troubled with the calculations that show we need a 52 because their largest ship only has 42. Yeah. So
So taking 3 away is still.
I mean, it's not great, and I guess my little frustration is we were asked by the city civil engineer to do away with that entrance on that northeast corner as a safety issue, and we were more than willing to do that. But by doing that, it's like, oh, now you can't use that I mean, we're staying within the existing footprint of the parking lot, so it seems a little unusual to me that there wasn't some give and take on that, but if that's what it takes, we're willing to skip those 3 stalls.
And we saw the one picture that's purely the conceptual, I'm sure more of a rendering of the building. And I probably date myself, because I remember when they came in here to build the building initially, one of the discussions was the Williams coding or something to break up the design. Is it gonna be a solid or a sort of?
So there'll be fenestration and awnings and so forth.
But some type of Williams coding.
Yeah, there'll be,
Because the building ended up being a very nice addition. I really appreciate that. So, other questions for the petitioner? Thank you. And then as an administrative question, we're recommending for the approval for this, do we need a public hearing?
This is an approval and the public hearing is not required. One minor note, I did skip one on the recommended conditions of approval, which is just requirements of the city engineer's review memo and approval of civil engineers, and there's more detail on that one in the written report. But then you do need to weigh in on the issue of parking whether you're comfortable. And this is just to show you, I asked the applicant's engineer to overlay where the new stalls are that are encroaching in the setback, and these are those 3 stalls that you can, where the grid is, and you can see below at the existing drive access that's going away in the landscape island. So
Just for my point, the fact we're going to 51.5 needed down to 49.9 for working events. I like taking those and setting them back a little bit because it might give a good angle from the corner. If anybody's coming up, they'll have a good angle from the corner. You know, make sure the cars aren't parked too much. If anybody's been down there quite a bit, you have a lot of traffic going through there now between all the semi trucks that are going both ways. And then if you're on the wrong dance night, there's a lot of vehicles now going in and out of that road out of 89. So if we trim that corner and we do the street parking stalls, I'm fine with that to make sure that corner. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, does anybody like to make a motion?
So any motion would need to include the recommendation to go down from the 52 or to the 49, correct?
And stay with the setback.
And stay with the setback.
And that's already set for recommendation report, right?
I don't,
Or we just need to clarify it. And so
That's-
if he clarifies it, plus the staff.
Yep.
Recommendations on the other and engineer.
Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't really clarify, so we need to clarify that.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan approval for Stone's Meats with the staff recommendations as well as the what's his name? The engineer, Jones's review memo. And then what was it on the parking that we maintain the setbacks and reduce
Reduce the parking. area.
reduce and allow them to reduce the parking in that area to maintain the setbacks. So
You have to put a number in the,
You can specify 3, they line up pretty nicely. If you want to use your motion, so
And you said to allow the setback, which is the requirement, right? And if they just allow the setback, it takes those three out.
Yeah, okay.
So we have a motion on the table by Jeff. Do we have a second? A second. We got a second by Chad. Any discussion on that topic? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Keep growing. We love it.
Thank
This,
you.
that's a great operation and great facility. I appreciate the way you guys keep the place looking very nice out there.
Over the years, now, we probably have our seven. We still live in North Ranch.
Please be safe out there. It's a little bit, might blow.
And she have for the next one. Or they could go on. She wanted to move 4B up to
Yeah, sorry, they're on one.
Oh,
That's my understanding. They're on one. I have, they're in design, sorry.
You and her Facebook friends. I'm the one who very essentially. I do. Have conversations with us. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so we're getting back on here, for those joining us online, we're gonna go ahead and take a 5-minute recess until we get everybody back. Just as a reminder, we're still being recorded here, so be careful, Okay, we'll leave this here. Maybe we're taking a 10-minute break and inside and outside.
We're salting. I didn't want anyone falling.
Why don't you turn off the recorder?
Oh, yeah, we can, that's a great idea. Just to pause it because we're not on. Pause.